Yes, we thank you and we welcome you once more. And we are looking forward to being with you as normal as we does. So thank you for staying tuned on this channel. And today we have got something hot and hotter for you. Yes, my name is Chirinji Mukiza Diedone. As you can hear, that's the name from Rwanda. Kigali, Rwanda, to Kenya, Nairobi. That's where we are today. And today I take this opportunity as I welcome you in this very special session to welcome also my brother who is our guest for today.
Thank you.
Yeah, now tell us about you. Introduce yourself, then we go ahead.
Okay, I am Saresio Karaoke. I'm born again, and Christ is my Savior, and He is the power which controls my life. And I love Jesus, and I'm from Kenya. That is.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love Jesus also.
That's good. That's good.
Yes, and now as we does life here on this channel, we go or we tackle on different sectors of life. And now I would like you to tell us what have you brought as today.
Okay, before maybe we go to that, I can bring a little of introduction. At
Yeah.
least you can first tell us where can we find you, maybe on your Twitter handle, Facebook, or any other platform.
Okay, you can find me on TikTok is Don na hapo kalai na hapo kidogo hivi alafu weke Roa LW. Then on Facebook ni Chirinji Mukiza Diedone. A very somehow sounding longer name, but that's all. Yeah.
Okay, and for me, you can find me in Facebook. That is Lowin Conqueror, TikTok Lowin Conqueror, and YouTube Lowin Conqueror. Yeah. So I wa to tell about what we are to talk about today, and I want to be doing sessions and the programs and the videos containing the context of my life in drugs, and I am also a counselor, and I do counsel about drugs and drug abuse. So if you are there outside the world and you'd like to be taught about those things, and maybe you are in a group, in a church, in an institution, and you'd like someone who can do counseling about drugs and drug abuse, then you can invite me. I'll also give my number there, and I've also given my handles, that is. And for our very first session today, I want to start how did I get involved in the world of drugs.
Yeah, sure.
So first I'll give a little information about my background, where I am born, and as I say that I'm a Kenyan. So I'll give a little about our culture and where I was brought up.
Yeah.
I have my parents, and also I have my grandpa, and I have my grandma. So and even though they are rich, my grandpa and my grandma, they are rich, but I can tell a little of my brother. How did I find myself in this lineage of drugs?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I'm believing that after we have done this first video, we will be having other sessions, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, but according to how Jesus will help us, we will be doing more and more, so that I can be able to narrate the whole story of my life, the community and the society where I was born, how I grew up in a family of drunken people, and how I got saved, because today I am saved. And as you can hear, I'm a student. I'm doing biology currently, and I'm looking forward to graduate and to become a full pastor as my course states.
Okay.
That is so.
That's so good.
Yeah. So let me start with the first. I was born in a family where there was a cases of drug and drug abuse, because my grandpa was using beer, and my grandma was also using beer. And in those days, even though I was not born, these are the stories which are passed unto me. So I was told that that my grandpa, he was taking beer very much. He was very known to be a drunkard man. And my grandma could prepare beer, the local brew, for my grandpa in those days. And it was not only in my family. In every family, it used to be the old men, they were taking beer, and their wives, they would be the one to prepare the local brew for them. So there were types of the instruments which were used to make beer in those days. Like one, there was a grater, the grater like the one you see which graters carrots. So they were made the bigger ones, whereby somebody could lie down and grate the sugar canes. And then there was some stuffs they used, they were called Kigeria Africana. So they could put them in jerry cans, and then after some few days, the juice which was grated from the sugar cane, it could ferment, and then they could present to their husbands.
Maybe I interrupt for just a moment. When you talk about the drug and drug abuse, like what is that the only kind of drug that was in your family lineage, ama kuna?
So like in those days, in those early days, okay, there was local brew, that is beer. There was also a snuff that is used on the nose, and there was also miraa, and also there was a cigarette, whereby in those early days they were not like the ones which we are getting from the shops. So they were just tobacco dried, and then they could load it with some paper. So that is like I was told about the story of my granny and my grandpa. It was, in many cases, they used to use beer, whereby my granny would prepare it for my grandpa. And also, okay, in the times when I was born, I found only my grandma. My grandpa had already passed. So those stories I was getting them from my grandma. And in those days there were so many cases of people they were like they were polygamous. So and beer was used in many of the occasions. Like when people they were getting married, you could find that the beer was one of the essential things in paying dowry. So I'd like to explain a little how I was born in a family whereby they were using beer, and some were using cigarettes, those tobacco, and even how it was prepared. Like taking the snuff, first you went to prepare it. So they were the planters of the tobaccos. So they could take the tobacco when it could be ready to be harvested. After harvesting it, they could cut small pieces.
Now you are talking about tobacco or tobacco?
Tobacco. that is. So they could prepare it, cut it into small pieces, and then they could dry it. After then, they could take the pieces of the pot. So they were to set that the piece of the pot on the fireplace, and then it could be steamed a little, and then they could take the small stones and they could add some cooking oil. Preparing the snuff, and then they could smear it. Then after some few days, they could now it could be ready to be used. So those are some of the drugs they used in those days. So like when it comes like to cigarette, it was just a normal thing. They could take the tobacco, they dry it, and then they smear it, and then it could be small particles, and then they load it maybe with
that's normal.
So let us now see some of the uses of the beer or the drugs which they used to use in those days. So because now we will get to know how I came to be brought up in a family of the people who are using drugs, and also in the community where people were using drugs. And one of the uses, as I had already said, it was used in paying dowry. So in every family you could find, if a man is ready to marry, when they would go and to start the negotiation about paying dowry, you could find them now they are being asked a part of those things they are paying. Maybe it is goats, maybe some cows, and maybe some cash and the sugar. Then beer was included, so it was very crucial in those days. Yeah. So there was another use, and you could find people using beer or some of those drugs as in making of the covenants and oaths. You know, and it will be good to note some of these uses, because some of the people today, even the youth, they are getting to use those things without even knowing their purposes and why were they being used maybe in those early days, like here in Africa. So you are finding some of the youth, they are using those drugs, but they don't know the meaning of them maybe in the society or the effects after they have used those things. And as I had said that they were used for covenants and oaths and some of the rituals. So like you see nowadays, people go to church and then they take the Holy Communion. You could find in those days, now there were some sects and groups of people who could use beer or miraa or cigarette or snuff. They could use it, or they could use those drugs as sealing the covenants and rituals. So in those days they used to do those things, and even nowadays as we live, there are some people who are using drugs as sealing covenants and oaths and using them for rituals. And now you find somebody is using those things without recognizing that he is being initiated in something.
Especially nowadays youth.
Yeah, especially
I
youth.
found them using or drinking without having that purpose or knowing the meaning of it.
Then there was another use, and that was for friendship and appreciations. You know, as you know, even it happens nowadays that when you're having a friend and you want maybe to celebrate something, and you also want to feel that friendship, and maybe you also want to appreciate them. So even in those days they could make beer, and then they could call friends, or you could call your friend, and then maybe if you wanted to appreciate him, you could tell him, now I have beer I wanted to offer you as my friend, so let us celebrate together. So, and as it was used in those days, and even in these days, it is also used. And also there was another purpose, which was for leisure and refreshment. So you could find those old wazes, after working a long day, they could come at evening as they had prepared their beer, or their wives and prepared their beer, and they could get time to refresh together with their friends and families as a village, or maybe as a family. So there was also another use, which was medicinal and for stimulants. You know, even as it happens to nowadays, you can find there are some of the people who are very shy. So maybe you are a leader in a community or in your village, and you cannot even stand in front of people maybe and say some few words. So some of the people, they could take beer so that they may have courage. So you could find that if even like young men, if old was there, they could understand that you cannot even be able to stand in front of a lady. So they could advise you. That is very true. It is well known. They could advise you. Can you think maybe try to take 1 or 2 cups and see whether you'll be able to handle that situation?
So that the fear can get lost. Now, I want you, before you proceed on, focus on how the drugs. We normally know these drugs that we use from the hospital. We call them also drugs. But can you please tell us about how those drugs that we are talking about in this session can be used medically?
No, now the problem is when we are using these drugs in our families and in our homes without the prescriptions of the doctor. That is now when we abuse them. Because like if it is something like beer, medically it can be used maybe for some purpose. But now there you are being prescribed. Doctor is telling you use this amount at this hour. But when we are using it in our homes, we have no limit. You find somebody is using this drug until when his brain crashes off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is, so we should be, maybe let not talk about using these drugs as something which is positive in our lives, knowing that it is not providing us anything more, so it is destroying us.
Yeah.
So we should take any drug, even if it is beer, even if it is what, take it through the prescriptions of the doctor.
Yeah.
But in those days, you could find like old wazes. There are some of those old wazes. They had learned some of the ways of the culture, and they could take something like honey, and then they could mix with some of the herbs. So and it could be prepared as some beer, and then you could find that you are being given maybe like the problems of the stomach. Many of the problems of the stomach in those days, people could be given some kind of the drugs, and they could be healed. Yeah.
Okay.
And there was another use of lurement.
Yeah.
So if like I want to be attached and to you in one way or the other, so I could decide that I prepare a beer and then I invite you.
In a way of making friendship.
Yeah.
Between families or individuals.
It can be families and also it can be individuals. You could find like maybe like I want to get something from you.
Okay. Now that's the point. Come on.
And I know that if I come direct, maybe you won't give it to me.
Okay.
So like in those days, people, they could even lease their shambas. So I'll first prepare a beer for you. So when you come and you'll be drunk, then there I'll introduce the topic unto you. Will you maybe give me something? And now that I've pleased your heart, then you come to the accent of what I want.
of being generous.
That is
But
that.
not through the consciousness.
Yeah. And even guys in those days, even ladies, you could find them doing the same. They are in need of you, so the only way they can reach unto you, of which now it became to be abusive, because you are doing this unconsciously. It is not your plan. So it is somebody else trying to first you stimulate your brain, and then you change your decision making. So your solutions are not the right decisions. That is. And we talk about the last one. It was also used for beer or any other drug. Was used for poisoning, and even people who are doing witchcraft, they were also using beer. So you could find like in those days there were some families which were known for witchcraft, and even to date they are there. It is only that like they do hide more than those days. Those days people used to know this family, it is made up of people who poisons other people. So they are people who are full of terror. They carry the bad omens every day. When you see them on the road, you'll be knowing people from this family. They are carrying bad omens, and they were also using beer to lure people and even to poison people. And even you could find that like if you want to do something bad maybe to somebody, you could go and introduce people. You introduce your story to people of that family, and then they were well known used to poison people.
Now I want you to tackle on how the beer can be ilikuwa inatumika aje ku poison watu.
So they could prepare their local beer, and then you are invited as a friend. So when you will be taking beer, so for them they have something maybe like a powder, which is a poison. And then they introduce a little in your cup, and then after some few days you find that now maybe you're having complications of your body, and then you die.
Now we've been talking about very sharp points that are also most relevant, and I'd like to ask you, tell us where those facts have been existing, because you have communities of people who are following us from Rwanda, Gali, Tanzania, and wherever in the world. Now tell us here in Kenya, where does those facts can be taken?
Okay, That was much practiced in the eastern part of Kenya. That's where I come from. I cannot hide it. I am from the eastern part of Kenya. So I was born there, I was brought up there, and I saw all those things happening. I saw my father taking beer. I saw the old men taking beer. I am seeing even today the young ladies and even the young men taking beer. And I was also once an addict of taking those drugs. So those are the things I have seen. I have seen people making covenants through beer. I have seen people being lured through beer. I have seen people being poisoned through beer. And all these things which I'm talking about, all those things which I've talked about, I have seen them happen.
So, let us thank you for today's session. We are looking forward to continue being with our guests, because I've heard that have so many things to tell us about. This is actually about his life story, and how he was born in that family whereby they were using the different drugs, and we are looking forward to stay with you as you stay tuned on this channel. Thank you so much.
Be blessed.